Welcome to episode 3 of Backmarkers with Kia and Hun, the slowest motorsport podcast in the world. Probably.
Third episode.
Already?
Our first race. Should we go through the teams? Just
Yes.
to keep an organised podcast. I think it's necessary.
Yeah, because I found myself sort of going, oh, where's this going to go? Because you sort of rely on sort of going, yeah.
I've got to bring you back in. Yeah, because you're just going off on one.
Yes. Focusing very much on that.
Shall we start from the top? Red Bull, Verstappen, P1, Checo, P2, Red Bull dominance. It's here.
Oh, they had it easy, didn't they? Had it easy.
Really?
Made it look easy.
So I said before this, didn't I? I had a quick look at tyre deck, and what really concerns me is that Max had such an advantage. His tyre deck was very minimal, which means he probably wasn't really pushing. He was probably just driving around, a leisurely Sunday drive. So what the hell would that car be like if he did push?
Yeah. Really worryingly fast. We still don't know how quick they can be, and therefore none of the other teams know how quick they can be. Mm-hmm. Does Max even know how quick he can be? I don't know. I don't think he's tried yet.
I think it would have probably will
come out of
done sim.
Yeah.
No,
you can push it there.
Yeah.
There's no component wear there. But if it wasn't for Perez having it was a little bit held up in some battles during the race, and it meant Max had a little bit more advantage straight away. So maybe that was why he thought, I could just drive it a little bit more conservatively now.
Yeah.
But even so, it's like even with Perez with him, I suspect it would have been a similar story where there would have been a little bit more pushing. But again, he could have afforded to drive conservatively with how much of a gap there was behind. It just looks like such a comfortable car to drive, which is weird to say about a Formula One car. Which they make it look so easy, but that looked like the easiest car on the grid to get round there.
He had like a 37-second gap from the next non-Red Bull car, which was Alonso.
Yeah. And
Alonso seemed to have a pretty quick and consistent, or his words, lovely car to drive. So
a lovely car to drive.
A lovely car to drive. But that's the first time they've
ever
won.
heard that, have they?
No. No. God, last year, we'll talk about Aston in a bit, but this time last year, it was a very different story.
Oh, goodness me, yeah. He would not have been saying anything like that last year.
No, God, he'd have had an absolute meltdown. The Bulls have only previously won the opening Grand Prix at Australia in 2011. And have never finished 1-2. Never finished 1-2 in the first race before. That was the first time.
Wow.
In the first race.
Yeah. I mean, it's an indicator for the rest of the season, that's for sure. Having said that, I know there's that. There's a bit of a track record with the winner of the opening race, in this case Bahrain Grand Prix, not winning the championship. But I'm struggling to imagine why Max wouldn't after how that went. Especially how difficult it was for them last year. This is like a complete shift. And it's exactly the result they would have wanted. That's going to be the massive springboard they need, especially when you take into account the difficulties of other teams and their own battles, which was just only going to reduce their increase their race time, and it's not what you need. But yeah, I would have expected Perez to be a bit closer to Max if it wasn't for those, let's say, hold-ups, given how competitive they were.
He didn't have a good start, did he? He had quite a bad start. He got tipped down and then squashed by Ferraris a little bit, and then had to make up them places. He had to catch Carlos, didn't he, towards the end?
Yeah.
So he was probably dealing with a bit more tired egg, and that was possibly why he wasn't up to the pace of his teammate, possibly.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
I think so.
the car isn't at one with Perez. It is with Max. I still think there's
Yes.
things that Perez would like from that car that maybe he's not getting. But I mean, if you look at 11-second difference, yes, there were times where he had to overtake and catch up and whatever, but that's huge when you're in the same car. that is a massive difference.
Yeah,
So,
at the level they're at.
yeah, I just don't really get it either. Look, I don't think Perez is as good a driver as Max. He's a very, very good driver, but he's not like Max. But I wouldn't have expected that gap at the first race. I just wouldn't have expected that at all.
No, definitely not. It's there's all the teams are going through that, the development through the winter. But there's something, whatever Red Bull have done, I'm not sure what it is, but they've pulled something out, and we thought they had a quick car last year, but they've done something with it this time that's put it shoulders above everybody.
Yeah.
And it's essentially a fight between Max and Perez now. And if it was for that slightly better start for Perez, it could have been a different story. It would have been enabled them to push each other a little bit more through the race. Which had knock-on effects as well. If having to push, they've put more wear on the car and so on. It's interesting because in practice, Max did a practice start and sort of bottled it a little bit. So everyone was thinking, "Oh, is that going to be a problem?" Because he hasn't actually has he nailed a practice start? But if anything, it was the other way around.
He had a very
in the real thing
start. He was gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
He was really, really gone in the beginning. But Red Bull have found almost a second in 12 months.
It's extraordinary.
Car. It's just mental. This is the second year of this type of car. And that is what Formula One's about. I know a lot of people say, "Oh, it's annoying when a team runs away," but that's the nature of Formula One. It's who can make the best car, who can drive the best, and when you combine them together, it's a force that just really can't be beaten. I know it's very early on. It's only the first race. Lots can happen, but with the issues that the other teams have got, Ferrari, Mercedes, I really don't see how they're going to catch Red Bull up whilst Red Bull are continuing to update throughout the season. I don't see it at all. It's definitely a Red Bull domination era right now.
It is. It is. It's not just whether they can get enough development to overlap Red Bull's progress, race by race, but it's whether they can do it fast enough to have an impact on the championship. And to see that level of dominance right off the bat with the issues of other teams, not just in the race either, indications in practice and qualifying that there were problems, is only going to be encouraging for a team like Red Bull, who have had this, now entering this period of relative dominance by their standards. And yeah, I think what we're going to be seeing a lot of is Max versus Sergio. Provided Sergio can get those starts nailed down. I'm sure he will. I'm sure it's a little blip, but this is the thing. I'm not even sure it was that bad a start because he was level with the Ferraris off the start.
It was
a bad
just that
start,
Max
but he was level with them, right?
Max had such a good start. That's why it looked bad. Yeah, that's what it was.
Yeah.
It looked really easy to go from the line in that Red Bull.
Yeah.
Where Perez made it look a little bit more difficult.
Yeah.
Just a little bit.
Full of red already. Yeah, the wing mirrors are bigger now, so he probably saw more red and was a bit intimidated. Who knows?
Like, oh God,
but... no. Not yet.
No, again.
Not
I
yet.
think the saviour of that race was a driver in green. And
oh yes,
the Aston Martin team, Alonso P3, Stroll. P6.
Absolutely.
A phenomenal drive from Alonso.
Absolutely.
Oh God,
Incredible.
it was only his second podium finish in the last 122 Grand Prix. That's how many bad teams he's been with.
122 Grand
Yeah.
Prix, not days or
No,
weeks.
Grand
Grand
Prix,
Prix.
races. Yeah, his first since Qatar 2021. Yeah.
That's extraordinary.
And the
He's
pace
waited
of
far
that
too long.
car, literally,
Yes.
Alonso was the only one to match Red Bull's. Sorry, Alonso's the only front runner to match Red Bull's pace in the last stint. Like he was matching Red Bull.
Wow.
So, and it looked like, I mean, going off tyre wear and stuff, they were slower on the softs, but they were definitely better on the hards. In fact, they were able to make them hards go a lot more, and they had less wear than Merc and Ferrari, which is probably why, you know, when it came to Alonso catching Hamilton just tried to battle, but that was an amazing overtake.
Oh, it was Jewel in the Desert Part 2, wasn't it? I mean, it's really, really special to see those two go wheel to wheel together, first of all. But it's not just that, it's that they were equally pushing each other. But you still had this dynamic where, oh, I need to be aware of the tyres, in the case of Hamilton particularly.
Yeah.
Which is similar to what was said to Russell last season. I can't recall which Grand Prix it was, but it was like, why do I have to slow down? Why do I have to give this up? But in this case, I think it was a case of, well, Lewis, after some battling, did end up finding himself in a position where I'm not going to be able to hold this without ruining my tyres before the end of the race. So I think there was that kind of approach where he thought, I need to try and stay with him and then look to battle later. But I just say Alonso's pace, thanks probably as well to the tyre deg on that Aston, which he's already commented on before, that it's really, really light. It to the point where it's negative in some cases with some of their runs, in the sense that it's just kept getting faster and faster. And as a result, there wasn't much of an answer from Hamilton or Sainz for that matter, but it was just absolutely extraordinary drive. And to that point as well, because in qualifying, I thought it was already an impressive performance. I know it was hyping up to potentially be a pole fight, but it was 5th and 8th for the Astons in qualifying. And I thought, you know, all right, they've already made massive gains. If they stay there, that's a great day for them. They both moved
I was let
forward.
down in quali. I expected more from them. I kind of knew that the race pace was going to be their strongest point, just based over testing, but I expected Alonso to be in that battle for the top 3, and he just didn't seem to be able to get the pace of the Ferraris, which then made me go, oh my God, what if? Like, what if that's it? What if it's just testing that they were good and realistically it's not in the race but no, it definitely, they've got something special there. I know that Perez said it's good to have 3 Red Bull cars on the podium. There's been a few rumours stating that it's basically just a Red Bull, but I mean, we need to have a team like Aston Martin who are able to come into Formula One and be in the top 3, to give other potential teams coming into Formula One the confidence that you can do it. Yes, it takes a bit of time, but you can do it. I don't think Alonso is going to be winning the championship, but I do think he could be up there top 5, potentially top 3, if the track suits the car.
Absolutely. It's one of those where they're setting the foundations already for a great package going through the season. Depending on the rate of development, it could be even better. But the crucial thing is, whatever they've done has given them this huge springboard into the realms of the top 5 and ultimately achieving this top three.
Yeah.
It's whether that can be maintained all the way
Yeah.
through, and whether they can then carry it through as well. I think the really encouraging thing for Aston is that comment from Alonso during the race. How
Yeah.
it was a lovely car to drive.
Lovely car to drive.
I mean,
And let's not, Stroll's driven it with broken wrists and a
yeah,
broken toe. If that car was a handful, I know he did say a handful.
very good.
More of them to come. If just put my foot in my mouth then, didn't I? I'll stop. Right. But yeah, if it was a real handful, I know that Stroll did say that it felt like his wrists were burning, but that's kind of obvious. But it seemed like he was able to drive it. I mean, he got P6, which I think is amazing considering 12 days before he was having surgery for broken wrists, which we now know is because of a bike accident. It had nothing to do with spending alone time.
Nothing.
So
He wasn't alone for most of winter, so it's all good there.
no. So stop pretending that's what happened, everyone. It's not funny.
Fun.
But just,
I mean,
I've got really high hopes for Aston Martin. They've got enough money behind them to keep developing the car. At least, pipping Ferrari. I don't know what Merc are going to do, but at the moment, they are definitely second as far as car goes in Formula One right now.
yeah, I mean, like I say, this is more than Aston could have imagined. You saw the reaction on the pit wall
Yeah, they were
as you're
going
coming across the
mental.
line. Yeah, it was basically like a victory for them, which you love to see it, because
Yeah.
this isn't one of those, like, it wasn't a weird race in the sense that circumstances allowed them to capitalize on an
Yeah.
opportunity and got a podium,
Yeah,
like we've
no.
seen in previous years. This was a legitimate on-pace victory
Yeah.
through overtakes against Ferraris and Mercedes.
Yeah.
So no wonder they treated this like a victory, because in terms of where they were, this probably
Oh,
does feel
that
like
is a
that.
victory.
Yeah,
Must feel like
yeah,
that. Yeah.
yeah. You have to treat it that way, because otherwise you won't appreciate it as much as you should do. Because this was an extraordinary achievement for a team that, where they were last year, was by their standards unacceptable.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But both drivers as well, as you say, even with the Stroll's injury, you got to say they've had a absolutely perfect day, I would say. I think that's what they would describe it
Yeah.
as, and I think there's certainly more to come from them as well. Just need to sort out the qualifying, I think, which is weird to say when they got 5th and 8th. They need to sort the qualifying out.
Because they've got too much to do in the race, haven't they? The qualifying down there. That's the thing. If they didn't have all that work that they had to put in, I mean, I know Stroll hit Alonso and that kind of caused some problems, but if that hadn't have happened and they qualified sort of third, they wouldn't have beat the Red Bulls, but they would have probably had less of a battle with Ferrari and especially Merc.
Yeah.
Speaking of Ferrari, Leclerc DNF with an engine issue. His PU shut down.
Yeah.
And Sainz got P4 after Alonso overtook him. And in all honesty, there's reliability issues there with the car, which is not good at all.
No.
In fact, Leclerc may end up with a penalty, because if he has to change I think it's his PU device again, or an electrical component, I can't remember what it was. That's his second one. And you only get 2.
Yeah, exactly. It's too early to be making changes like that.
Far
I
too
think you might be
early.
right. If it was control electronics, there was discussion
Yeah,
about that,
that's it.
about whether it was related to it. Because interestingly, the car was still on, so there was still an electrical supply to keep the car live, but the actual control electronics expected some kind of failure there,
Yeah.
which meant the power unit was useless, basically.
Yeah.
So without that, nothing can run. And that was that. Curtains on what could have been a decent result for Ferrari.
Yeah. I don't know. I
And
still feel like Alonso would have caught because they were dealing with tyre deg. Their tyre deg wasn't as good, and they struggled on the hard tyres. I know when Alonso was catching Sainz, he was like, "Look, if I fight this, I'm gonna have to pit again."
yeah,
So they were definitely struggling. It's similar to Merck's deg, but they were faster than Merck. So I don't think that they got caught by
yes.
Merck, and they didn't. Well, Sainz didn't, but I do think that Alonso would have probably caught Leclerc.
I think you're right
Possibly.
because there was quite a big gap. Was it about 6 seconds between Alonso and Sainz at the end of the race? I'll
Yeah,
say 6 or 7
yeah,
seconds. So he pulled that gap out really quickly after all those overtakes were pulled off. And I know that Sainz was having to think about Hamilton behind, but
mm,
that's the thing. Sainz was having to think about Hamilton behind and not Alonso ahead.
yeah,
So that says a lot about the overall pace. And Sainz was making it very clear on the radio that this, the tyres aren't there, and the team was coming back saying, yes, you need to manage these, otherwise you won't make it.
mm,
So then you had to think quite carefully about Hamilton. But as you say, I think, as you rightly say, I think the deg is probably quite similar because there's not much Hamilton could do. Sainz did stay in fourth, which I
yeah.
didn't
He did.
expect. I didn't expect that. I would have thought Hamilton was probably backing off to try and make an assault on
I
on
don't think Merck
Sainz
had
towards
it.
the end, but
I don't
he
think they
just
had the
didn't really
pace
have anything
overall.
left. No.
No. Because they've improved on lower drag and their pit stops were quicker. In fact, they were
Mm,
quicker than Red Bulls, which is quite an improvement.
it is.
Like nearly half a second quicker
It's
overall.
amazing.
So, there's improvements for Ferrari, but the car, I mean, they had rear wing issues, didn't they? It was flopping around one of the
Yes.
practice sessions. And you can I get that impression from Ferrari that the car's just a bit flimsy and a bit
Yeah.
weak, and then the reliability issues. First race is
Mm,
very worrying because then penalties will just accumulate,
yeah.
you know.
It's Yeah, you're right. Absolutely. I mean, because I'm thinking back a little bit because obviously I know that Red Bull had their issues last year at Bahrain, both of them, both
Yeah,
cars, and they've still got to where they were at the end of last year. So as much as this is not a good start for Ferrari, I think the deeper issues are actually in the pace because reliability can happen to anybody, and you can
yeah,
get past that with the right targeted development to sort of overcome what it was that actually ultimately caused it. And some of these can be random as well. Might just have a component failure that no one anticipated, but it's the troubling thing is just where they were in terms of pace and the
yeah,
deg at what is a low deg track as well,
yeah,
which you think ahead a little bit. Monza, high deg. So what is that going to do for them? I'm not quite sure. And I think that's probably the bigger thing because reliability can be fixed. Red Bull proved that last
yeah,
season. Pace is harder to do. The faster you get, the harder it is to find those increments. So
mm,
I suspect this is going to be of significant concern in the Ferrari camp going forward. But from their perspective, at least they have some points on the board,
yeah, with
and they can
science.
take that with some solace at least. Yeah,
And they can take that they are faster than Merck
they
at the
can.
moment because they're not going to
Mm,
be fighting with Red Bull at the pace that they're at. But at least they're faster than Mercedes. At least,
yes, it's a
yeah.
bit. It's a plus. It's a
There's a
positive
plus
thing you can
there.
take from it.
It's race
There is.
one.
Yeah,
There's a chance, sort of, in a way.
yeah. I know it was a bad day for them, but that's the standard they're now setting for themselves because they were giving Red Bull at times last season a hard time.
Yeah,
So is this that I like that's their standards? Like this isn't unacceptable. this is unacceptable. So, we need to work towards getting this car sorted out so that we can stay where we are and keep moving closer to where Aston currently are, clearly, and ultimately Red Bull. But yeah, looking back a bit further now, I guess, because Mercedes are definitely not where they want to be either. That's for sure. Toto made it very clear. This was a bad day for them, as he put
I
it.
have no patience for Merc at all. I literally don't get where they went. Let's sit around this big table and talk about 2023. Now, 2022, the car wasn't quite good enough to beat Red Bull. So what did they think? That Red Bull wasn't going to get better this year and they were just going to do no development on the new Red Bull and sit where they were in 2022 and go, do you know what? I think we'll be all right with having the exact same design as we had last year and we'll be fine. But I think they've just brought it on themselves. And now they're being so public with it, which I think is bad morale within the team. Toto is very like, this was the wrong decision. That's showing lack of trust within his team completely.
Yes.
And then George turned around and said, yeah, Red Bull have got this year.
That is ridiculous. He should have been briefed about that because that is not the way you go. And the reason why is because Mercedes, specifically Toto, actually, not just Mercedes, Toto has prided himself on the way he's instilled a culture of no blame and looking after each other, accepting mistakes, and developing and moving on in the right direction.
Yeah.
There is indications there that culture's gone out the window. For whatever reason, he's not even sticking by his own philosophy.
No, I don't give a shit.
No. And, you're only going to fall further back. He knows this. That's the really frustrating thing. He knows this will fall back from here if he keeps this up. It's not great leadership qualities when you've got Toto saying this, and that is almost allowing Russell permission to say things like that as well. I mean, you can't let those habits creep back in because they're not going to end well.
It's race one. Like, look, they're matching Aston and Ferrari, right?
Right. Yeah.
They're just lacking pace overall.
Right.
They're third fastest on the softs. They're better on the softs than they are the hards.
Mm-hmm.
So there is improvement-ish. But where their car is right now is behind Aston and it's behind Ferrari. And that's not where they wanted to see themselves. I don't know how they expected anything more with a car that just didn't do... Because they don't want to be fighting with Ferrari. They want to be fighting with Red Bull. And
Correct.
they're saying, this design isn't working now. Well, why bring it? Why do... I just can't get over it. And then they're now just got this attitude of, let's blame everyone else. Toto, you're the team principal. You also own part of the team, as far as I'm aware. Surely you get a good say in that. And if you thought that it was wrong, then you should have guided your team elsewhere.
Right. Yeah. The buck stops with him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's...
Someone needs to answer the question. He is primarily responsible for doing just that. And when he answers the questions like that, what kind of example does that set for every other member of that team, high and low through the hierarchy? It just shows them that, this kind of petty behaviour is now how things work in here. Where we can't accept defeat. We can't accept that we are slower and can't then push forward to try and make it faster.
No.
That's what I always thought the philosophy was about. And Toto was even held lectures, guest lectures, talking about the culture in Mercedes. He's had podcasts.
We should get him on here.
Visits and stuff. I know. We're going to come on and talk about the culture at Mercedes. That'll be fascinating.
Yeah.
See how it's changed since he joined Mercedes. What have you had to do to bring things back to greatness? because I'd be really curious to hear what he has to say, because I think it'd be a very different answer to what people were getting about 4 years ago.
Yeah,
It's a very different environment in there now. And it's
very
very
much.
easy to have a nice culture when you're winning.
Yes, it really shows who you are as a person when things aren't going right for
Hmm.
you. The real
Absolutely.
comes through. And look,
But,
I want to see Merck do well. I want to see Lewis up there and George battling, because we had a great season when Lewis was able to bring a car up to Max and say let's
mhm.
duel. But you know, like I said, I don't understand what they thought they were going to gain from this car. I don't know. And if they've got another car there, which there's rumours that there's different design, they need to bring that next race. They need to put
I
that
think so.
in the sim. They need to test it, and they need to bring it, because they've got to do something significant. Otherwise, the other teams behind them are going to develop,
Mm,
you know.
that's right.
So they
Only be
need to
losing
do,
ground.
yeah, massively. And they're just playing catch up with Red Bull, and they're
Yeah,
so far behind. So
it's
far.
sad to see.
Yeah, it
It's so
is.
frustrating, because last season they spent a long time. So we brought this up on the last episode. We were talking about how they've got these two designs, and last season they spent too long on the wrong design. With hindsight, they spent too long on the wrong design. So if they are going to decide that we need to try something else, do it straight away.
Yeah,
Don't wait. Get on with it, and maybe
bloody get
you'll
on with
then
it.
find that answer, that you know which is the best way to go. And it's not just that; it's the design that gives you the most flexibility for development as well. You end up down a rabbit hole where it's a cul-de-sac. Basically, you can't then develop it any further. You need to have a complete rethink, uh, revolutionize the
Mm,
design again. And it seems like they keep getting stuck in two minds, which is a real shame, because when you got all that expertise back there, they haven't been able to make the decision yet. Even these rumors at
mm,
all about a second design is such a troubling thing for a team as a team with as much success as Mercedes have had recently. It is strange to see them taking that kind of approach. Um, But one thing I will say, because obviously I'm spoken about it very much, and Lewis was obviously the leading Mercedes, and I was, pleasantly surprised by his reaction following the race. Yeah, he's upset that the race didn't go to plan and they didn't get the result they wanted, but at least he sounded like a leader.
yeah,
Um, Trying to keep the morale up a little bit. We'll keep moving forward. It's not what we want, but we'll keep moving forward and keep working. That's the sound. That's what a leader sounds like.
yeah,
Someone who's willing to take some responsibility and just keep that motivation up as much as you can, even if it's verbally.
yeah.
But
But
then
you
again, we
need
don't know what
that.
kind of conversation's going on.
You
Yeah.
need that. I mean, he's been with the team for a very, very long time now. He knows everyone. Everyone knows him, and he tends to be more positive now than previous Lewis. Um,
Mm,
and that's what you need. He is driver one. Sorry, George
yeah.
fans. He is driver one, and that is his role in a lot of ways, is to keep team morale up.
Absolutely.
And he did do that. Um, he did that really well, which I expect of him. That's his
Hmm.
personality, really. He's more on the
It
positive
is.
side. Um, what was I going to say? Another thing that we needed to do last podcast and we didn't do halfway through, which is a good idea, is tell everyone that this podcast is available on all major platforms. You can
Mm.
listen to it on Spotify, Apple, Google, whatever else other podcasts places are.
Yeah. And on
it's
YouTube.
and it's on YouTube where you can subscribe.
Yes.
And if you could follow and subscribe on whichever platform, all of them, ideally, that would be
Mm.
very, very helpful to help the podcast grow. And it helps us to continue to talk on and waffle on about Formula One. So make sure you do. Otherwise, I'll send Kieran on you.
Oh, you don't want that. Trust me.
He'll come round with his rock collection.
That rock
Stu's,
hammer's got some dust on it. I'll clear it off.
is that safe?
Uh, we'll find out.
Anyway, back to the podcast.
Anyway.
A team that I was really shocked by, not just Aston Martin, but Williams. Williams throughout testing looked a bit iffy. Qualifying, a bit. And then it was like the car just transformed and just became something that could suddenly be driven.
It's odd. It's so odd that just how it suddenly came alive.
It was so strange. Albon got P10 and Sargent got P12, which I think is absolutely fantastic for a rookie.
It is.
With potentially the back marker team. I think it was a fantastic result
Right.
for him.
Yeah, there was indications in qualifying that, it was another one of those Williams years at the back, but they pulled it right out in the race, whether that's just down to strategy. You still have to have the pace, though. And I think it's really fascinating that Sargent wasn't that far behind either,
No.
coming in 12th. So that's really encouraging for the team, knowing that, because there were some concerns about Sargent being quick enough, basically.
Yes.
He's coming straight in from F2 and not being a champion or very rarely a race winner, as I recall. He has stepped into a Formula One car and clearly is delivering what the team needs. And while it wasn't points, it's an encouraging place to be.
Yeah. Only 2 places behind Albon, who's been with the team for a year and been in Formula One for longer than that with a top team. I think it is really, really good. And to shout out Albon, because he had a really good time. He was being caught by Tsunoda towards the end and managed to maintain that gap. And I know he was struggling a bit towards the end, but a really, really good showing from Albon as well. I think it's quite a positive outing for Williams. Potentially they're not the backmarker team this year.
No.
Potentially.
They have showed that. Perhaps they forgot to turn on the Duracell boost or something. I'm not quite sure until the race, you see.
That's
Might have just
what
been a
it
little blunder there.
was. They just didn't turn it on. And when they turn it on, it has a little bit of a glow.
It does.
Yeah.
It does.
And
Got that golden glow.
They're ready.
They are. Yeah, it's the first race. There's always some teething problems, right? It forgets to turn on the switch, and they got it optimal. They got it spot on, and to have got point to straight on the board for Williams, I think it's a really, really positive start. And if they only move forward from there, there's potentially double points finishes on the cards later in the season as well.
Yeah.
So they have shown they are definitely back in the midfield fight going forward. Because ultimately the points are scored in the race. Aside from the point for pole position, the bit that matters is where they were quickest, and that is the biggest thing. As we know, the midfield is extremely close. So those small margins are going to matter even more going forward.
And
they'll be very encouraged.
They weren't the worst on Tyre Dag either. They weren't the best, but they weren't the worst either. I think that's really encouraging with a new car.
Absolutely.
Going forward, because I do believe they had the worst last year beginning. I'm not sure. They were near the back anyway.
They were one of the worst.
So that's really, really encouraging. I'm gonna try and not laugh, but I honestly, Alpine and their day out was good on one side. Gasly P9 going up 11 places, which was absolutely brilliant. Very, very good
heroic,
showing from
frankly.
Just brilliant. But then on the other side of the carry,
oh dear. Oh dear.
So Ocon got a 5-second penalty for not lining up on the grid properly. And that was kind of a bit weird what he did. He was looking in his left mirror when he was slotting himself into the grid position. Just sort of just then stopped focusing. And then got a further 10-second penalty for serving that penalty incorrectly. That was the mechanic's fault. They started fiddling with the wing, and I counted it was about 4 seconds. So it definitely wasn't long enough.
Yeah.
And then got another 5 seconds because he sped in the pit lane coming in to serve the 10-second. I know it's a new car, but I pretty much think pit limiters right about the same place. I don't know because I haven't seen much of the steering wheels of the cars this year, but I would imagine they're fairly similar, pit limiter and that.
I can't imagine why they'd have to change it, really.
No.
So it is an odd one. It is an odd one. Unless everything that happened previously before he sped in the pit lane is what threw him.
Maybe
threw
a
him
bit
out of kilter a little
angry.
bit.
Yeah, maybe
Yeah,
like,
just not concentrating. Yeah, like why am I coming back in? Oh wait, there's the Mr. Pit limiter again, and it just gets worse. It snowballs very quickly. And yeah, a lot of that was completely avoidable. Frankly, and the team will be very much looking into all of that to work out what because it's like a knock-on effect. One led to the other every single time, and it ended up accumulating in the end 35 seconds or something.
35 seconds.
Yeah, it's just too much for a Formula One race. The level they're at, you can't allow those kinds of mistakes.
No.
But that goes for driver and team, though. Let me be clear, because as I say,
mechanics were
Ocon
at
could have
fault.
avoided.
Yeah.
Yeah, that. Yep. Driver, mechanics, team all played a role there. Because every single one of those penalties had some influence from each of those parties. So yeah, they've got a lot of conversations to have to work out what on earth happened there. Because he could have had a day like Gasly at least, and been in the points.
They had the pace.
Yeah,
they were a lot better than I thought they were going to be. Like I thought, oh my god, they're going to be at the back. In fact, I think I predicted they would be at the back. A bit wrong. I think they're midfield, and the car doesn't look too bad. To be fair, I mean, it's probably an improvement for Gasly because the AlphaTauri last year was terrible. So I think going forward, there should be opportunities for them to gather some good points, but I don't think they're going to be fighting with Merc and Ferrari, or I don't think they've got the pace for that, unfortunately.
They're a midfield outfit at the moment.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, plus they need to fix those internal issues, and then they can really demonstrate the full pace of the car. Once they get around that, I think then we'll get a better idea about where they are. I think it's probably midfield. They'll be getting good points, I think, at times, but that's about as much as they can hope for at this stage.
Yeah.
So yes, a mixed bag, a bittersweet day, I think.
Yeah.
For Alpine. Yeah.
I'll tell you who didn't have a good day. Your favourite team.
Oh yeah.
Two of his favourite teams, actually. You had a terrible time yesterday, didn't you? So we had
absolutely
McLaren,
shocking.
just so bad. Norris P17. He had a pressure leak.
Yeah, the engine air pressure. Yep, exactly. They had to keep topping him up. I mean, he hit 5 times through the race, which is, I don't think I've seen that since the McLaren Honda days.
Oh,
actually.
yes. Those were good days.
It has been a long time since we got that joy. Every single race. But this is not an encouraging start.
No.
It really is not. The one encouraging thing from the perspective of Lando is once they did top up his air, he was matching the Merc and Ferrari of Hamilton and Sainz.
I'm going to take
So
that. I'm going to take this away from you. He was on new tyres.
oh,
So
that would
yes,
explain why.
he was, but I
He
mean we
was.
can't look at runs with McLaren because they didn't do enough of a consistent run to see how they were.
No.
So they may have some pace, but they were on newer tyres. That's why every time he
Yeah.
pitted, he got new tyres. So because they were potentially going to run out,
That would have helped.
that will have definitely have helped him 5 pit
Yes.
stops. You know, but
Oh, of course.
it was
It's a shame he's a lap
encouraging.
down.
But he was 2 laps down in the end. He was, because they pitted him last
2
lap,
laps.
I believe.
Yes. Yeah, it's just absolute disaster, really. You know, as much as they can say, oh, well, the pace was there, it's like, we need to be on the lead lap for that to matter.
Yeah, it doesn't
It was just
matter.
that one little indicator that there might be something. Because when you take into account the electrical issue for Piastri really early on, in his first race, which is really sad,
That was
frankly, he would have
gutting.
wanted just to get to the checkered flag.
Yeah, that
Sadly, that
was
wasn't the
so
case.
gutting. They tried to change
That's,
his steering wheel, didn't they? And then it just cut out.
yeah,
The whole car just went, and that was it. Poor
yeah,
guy.
something's wrong there for sure.
Yeah.
They need to get on top of that urgently because he needs that first race for his confidence, I think,
Oh,
because
yeah.
there's nothing worse for a rookie when you can't finish your debut. And yeah, as much as it definitely wasn't his fault, it's not like he binned it. It was like,
No.
it's just the fact he hasn't yet done a race distance. And that's going to be a concern going forward, especially when the next race being Saudi Arabia is high power and therefore, you know, the tolerances on the engine are higher. That's going to be a concern for them too. If the reliability was bad at Bahrain, this could be an issue again. So he's just going to go in there feeling that'll be in the back of his mind. Both of them, in fact, you know, they'll both have this in the back of their mind, and then you can't concentrate as much as, say, Red Bull when their car's working lovely. So, yeah, I'm just it's gutting. It is gutting because of where they were and where it seems to have got to in one winter break. But maybe things will be pulled back, but it's not going to be very soon.
No, they just haven't got anything. They don't really have pace. I mean, they got through to Q2, but that was because Norris did the lap first.
Yeah.
You know, it would have been out in Q1. There's very little, you know, they've not got the pace, they've not got the reliability. It's just back to McLaren Honda.
It is catch up. It's just playing catch up during the season. The only saving grace is that the midfield is as close as it is, means you have less to do to
I don't
make
feel
gains.
Yeah, McLaren
But
are not a midfield
you've still
team
got
right
to.
now. They're not.
No, they're a
at the
back marker.
back. They are a back marker. I would argue that they probably would have been behind Haas if they'd have got to run, potentially.
Yes.
And Haas didn't have a great car. I mean, maybe one Haas. That was a bit harsh. Maybe one. Kevin, obviously. But yeah, I don't think they would have just been plagued with problems. And you know, God knows what they're like tired egg wise. So we don't have enough information to know. So
That's impossible to say.
But Kieran, you'll never walk alone.
Oh, good.
This is the only time I'm ever going to talk about football. 7-0.
Oh, it got better.
Ah, God.
It got better. You know, thought, oh, that's a bad day. I wonder if it could be improved a little bit. Oh no, it can't. No, it can't. We went to Anfield, and we walked alone out of there. That's for sure. That is tail between our legs moment. Oh,
See,
so soon after a trophy as well.
I know. That's what I was going to say. They literally just won a trophy. They forgot what they were doing.
Honestly,
they were offside
I thought we were joking.
Twice for a goal. They were offside. I was like, "Do you know what that is? What are you?" Oh God. Oh, it's
Oh, I
just
don't
so
know.
bad.
Don't know what to.
Basically, Kieran, don't support any of the teams and then they'll do good. I think
Right.
that might be
Yeah,
it. Yeah,
that's the
just do that.
mistake.
So
Yep.
support Red Bull so that they can just get near to
Yes.
everyone
Yes.
else. And then support whoever's at the top of the Premier League, because I don't bloody know. Is it Chelsea?
Come on, Arsenal.
Is it Arsenal?
It's actually Arsenal. Not kidding. So I'm now a
Wow.
Red Bull fan and
Mm-hmm.
an Arsenal fan. It's
Yeah.
going to cost me a fortune in merch. You have no
Oh.
idea. Um, you know how much football shirts cost nowadays?
Oh god, that's terrible. There are children that are starving, but yeah, anyway, Kieran. I'm
It's
not
a
laughing
first
at
world
children
problem.
starving. I'm not laughing at that. I'm laughing at Kieran. Anyway, back
No,
to a real
not
sport.
that.
Alfa
Let's talk about
Romeo.
Alfa Romeo.
Alfa Romeo. Bottas kept the pace of Sainz, Stroll, Russell, and Hamilton at the end. So that,
He
for
did.
me, tyre deg wasn't too bad. They
Mm,
weren't. And well, to be fair to Bottas, he did capitalise on the bad starts that people had had. But a P8 wasn't that bad. But Joe had
no.
a different story. He pitted towards the end. I don't really know why. I haven't found any notes on it at all. But they seem to have very different races, considering the car was pretty good and pretty racy, to be fair.
Yeah. They're on the same strategy. They've been right there with each other. There wasn't any
Yeah.
difference between the two in terms of the driver pace, at least. It's just something to do with the strategy. Again, I'm not entirely sure myself as to why that was. The only thing I
Mm.
can suspect is some minor reliability issue they needed to double check before the end of the race. There's some indicator from the telemetry dragged them in, because I
Yeah.
don't see why that would just be a tyre stop. It
Mm.
doesn't make sense. When they had so much to potentially gain from not pitting. So there must have been good reason to do so.
Yeah.
So I'm suspecting something along the lines of reliability, but
Or
something very minor.
possibly lack of moustache for Joe,
Mm,
because we do know that gives extra powers. Um, so maybe I don't know if he can grow a moustache. Quite young, isn't he? So, um,
yeah.
maybe a stick-on one or
Well,
something.
they could put it on the tear off, you see. So maybe he pulled too many tear offs off his
Yeah,
visor, lost the moustache, thought, no, we've got to bring you in for a brand new helmet which has the moustache on it and get your pace back.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Mm.
See, Bottas doesn't have this issue. He can actually grow one.
He actually has hair sprouting out of
Yeah.
his top lip. Magnificent, absolutely magnificent.
And he has his head on his helmet.
Well, he
So
did.
bonus points for that.
He did. He's not
Yes.
brought it for the race, has he? It was testing, which
It's
was
sad,
sad.
really.
That
Should
was
have
very,
kept
very
it.
sad. Yeah.
Yeah.
Something that wasn't magnificent.
Mm.
Ba-da-bum.
See what you're doing here.
Haas.
Hmm.
Haas have that set right. There's a couple of things before we even. I'm going to get irate, right? One, why they
Can't wait.
started Kevin on hards. Everyone was on
That was
softs.
weird.
Stupid decision. They have the worst tyre deg out of anyone. They are better on softs than they are hards. They're the worst on hards. Kevin pitted the same time as the soft runners. So
Right.
what advantage that was, I will never bloody know. And the problem with Haas, and this has been a consistent problem with Haas, they can do quick one laps, but in the race, they are nowhere. So they've
Yeah.
got tyre deg, slow, and then Hulk's driving around, getting black and white flags just for added effect, and then getting a 5-second penalty that mean bugger all because he was at the back.
Just so disorganized again. It's
I
the
don't know
setup,
what
isn't
they
it?
do.
They've got the
Oh,
setup for the quali, which frankly is just not smart.
yeah, it's the
Just
wrong
get it
way
right for the
round.
race. Yeah. You look at what Williams did and what Aston did. yeah, maybe their qualifying wasn't amazing, but at least they were able to move forward.
Yeah.
Haas from the start set themselves up for failure
Mm.
with the wrong tyre choice on K-Mag's car, and then presumably a poor setup, which didn't allow them to capitalise on anything they'd done in qualifying for the
No.
race. So,
Even
God only
Hulk
knows.
looked slow. And he
Yeah.
was so quick in quali. And even he was struggling. And on the softs, they were quick on the softs, but not for long.
No.
Like, so they just have a couple of quick laps and then they be in trouble again. It's just, I don't know what they've done. Have they just brought last year's car? Like, they were saving money the other day with having only a 3-person pit wall. And where have they put
Yeah.
that money? Honestly, I don't, probably making merch or something. Because I don't know where it is at all. It's so frustrating because they've potentially got their best driver lineup for a while.
Oh,
I
yeah.
I still think Grosjean a bit better than Hulk, but
Yes, he is.
they've got
Yeah.
the drivers. They've got the drivers. Sort your car out. It's the worst on the grid.
Yeah, they can't drive to their potential because,
Oh no.
you know,
McLaren are the worst on the grid. Sorry, I'll take that back, Cass.
yeah, nearly Haas are nearly the worst.
Nearly, but
They
McLaren's
were
there.
it was marginal. I think
Yeah.
it was owed to the fact that McLaren had so many reliability issues,
Mm.
which might have saved Haas's bacon a tad in
Yeah.
terms of not being awarded the wooden spoon. But that's not one to celebrate, sadly, for Haas either. When you got two drivers of that caliber and that experience as well, one of which is a podium finisher,
Pole
it's
position.
just not acceptable. And a pole position. Exactly. It's not acceptable. It's not acceptable, especially with the start they had last season. It's just not what they wanted at all. I don't know what it is again. It says it just spending in the wrong places and not placing enough focus on the following year's car. I'm not quite sure, but either way, they've got a lot of work to do again just to get back into the midfield fight.
Yeah.
Let alone even think about points.
Yeah.
So, yeah, another stressful year for Gunter, I suspect.
Bless him for sticking with it. Because I'd have ditched him by now. Right, bugger that. I'm gone. See ya.
That's where the budget went. The steel doors already.
Yeah.
The damage has
Oh, yeah.
already been done, literally. Oh, bad day. Bad day for them.
Who was your driver of the day?
Um,
Actually, no.
well,
Driver of the day is too easy. Driver of the weekend. Let's do something
the
different.
driver of the weekend.
Driver of the weekend.
If we're going off the entire weekend and the endurance required to actually be able to drive all that time, there's got to be Stroll then, isn't it? With his injuries, and then to come away at the end of a P6. I mean, it's obvious the driver of the day was, but in terms of the weekend, you got to put it down to his ability to actually deliver that result after all the practice sessions, all the qualifying with the car on its limit, and then delivering the race as well. Yeah, heroic, I'd say.
Yeah, I'd say heroic. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've broken my wrist. It's not an easy thing to get. There's no way I could have been driving a Formula One car after 12 weeks. Like, no, I was still in a cast. Yeah. So, it's and then broken toes. I mean, I don't know which toe it was. I've broken all my toes, and it depends on which one it is. If it's the little ones, it's not too bad. But if you're in the middle, it puts you off entirely. And then it's the main focus of pushing a pedal as well.
That's what you're feeling it.
Yeah,
totally.
So
the way they're pushing a pedal, they're not doing it by their knee, they're doing it by their ankle, and that's where the toe comes in with the precision, which you're going to need in a Formula One car.
Yeah.
And he still managed to do it. I mean, as I say, with the turnaround in terms of getting the surgery and the recovery, it is miraculous. From a breakage.
Money.
Oh yeah. No, don't get me wrong, it does help. The actual recovery itself, you can tell he's an athlete. I'm sorry, you just can, because recovery time was nothing, really. Maybe the adrenaline of being an F1 car helps a bit. Usually it does.
Mm.
It takes the pain away a tad, but you probably have felt it afterwards.
Oh God, yeah. He said it was burning. It
Oh,
was absolutely burning. But
yeah, he's gonna
on
wash
the
that
other
up.
side of it, you know, I said it. I know a lot of people said it. Oh my God, imagine buying your son a car or a team, a racing team, and then them breaking their wrists so they can't drive it anymore. I kind of feel like if he didn't race, he would have been the butt of jokes again. So I think he had to. I just think he felt like I'm just gonna get stick, so let's just get through it. And he did a race on the sim on Wednesday, and that's when he got the okay to carry on and to
Wow.
race this weekend. So you know, I know it's slightly different, but he still had the force and the G and all that lot that comes in with the sim. So you know, a very very impressive weekend from Stroll. Not many
Yeah,
people do that.
absolutely. No, absolutely not. And he's had his stick in the past, and I think you know what, he shut that down quite significantly
No,
just
I'll
through
still
that
give him
performance alone.
stick. I'll stick with him a bit stick. Do you know what I mean? It's dad bought him
Leave
a
you to it
bloody
then.
F1 team. Come on.
Yes, the pay driver thing doesn't help matters. I know.
Jeez. It's not that he's a
Most
bad
drivers are.
driver. It's just I mean that thing with Alonso, he's got a thing about taking his teammate out. He did it with
Yeah,
Vettel
that was a
last year,
very
didn't
close
he?
call. Yeah, he did. He did. I mean, that was here. It is a hero or zero moment. That one, wasn't it? Because in
Yeah.
the end, he is being regarded as a hero for even completing all that and coming away with P6. But that was moments from complete zero and colliding with your teammate, or worse, Stroll staying in the race and Alonso getting a puncture.
Oh no, I thought he had a puncture.
Yeah, that's what I
I
thought. I
thought he
thought he's hit him
did.
quite hard there. I thought,
I
oh,
was
just
like,
a sec. He's going to end up,
no.
yeah, he's going to pull over or something. Oh, God, don't even think about it. Somehow, Alonso survived at least 3 knocks through the race.
He did.
It's extraordinary how much he managed to survive. On his own little episode of Drive to Survive, I think.
Yeah,
Just in that race alone.
an absolute legend. Just
Mm.
the last thing before we go, just for Alonso, just because it's necessary. Um, he was he was 41 years old, 41 years and 219 days old at the Bahrain Grand Prix, and there's only one older driver who's been on the podium in the last 37 years, and that's Michael Schumacher. He was 43 at Valencia in
Wow.
2012. 22 years in Formula One. Well, 22 years since he made his debut. And he was driving around with, like, I think Crofty said it, 25% on the race. The rest is having a conversation about his teammate. Like, he's just, my brain doesn't work that quick. My brain's
No.
never worked that quick. It's something else. And I think there's only a few drivers on the grid that have that ability. So I think the people that have said, you know, it's time to retire, bug off. It's
Not
absolutely
even
not the
close.
time to retire. You know
He's still
nothing
good.
about racing if you're saying that man should retire. Nothing.
Not a
Nothing.
foggiest.
No.
Yeah. He's not lost it in any
Mm-mm.
way. In fact, I would say he's only got. Well, this thing, he was already setting high standards. But if anything, in some ways, he's got better. His racecraft is just absolutely extraordinary. It's so fascinating seeing him pitted against the likes of Hamilton and Sainz because it just demonstrated that ability, that racecraft that he's never lost, and I would certainly argue has actually improved.
Yeah. Anything else to add? Or is that it? Are
Oof.
we done? Is that the
Well,
podcast?
yeah, I think it is. I think it
I think it's
is.
done.
Just to say that we've got 2 weeks to wait until the next Grand Prix at Jeddah. Very high power, low downforce. So yes, bit of a different philosophy to Bahrain. So I'm very curious about what the pecking order is going to look like after that. Definitely won't be surprised if it's Red Bull at the front, though. No, not at all. Not at all.
Kieran isn't as, what's the word?
Committed?
Committed, that's it, to the podcast as I am. I have not booked anything. I will be here every week. So, we may have a gap where there's not an episode. I think we'll do the next race preview. Possibly, maybe give our predictions, and then that week that you're not here gallivanting off, we can just go, no, we did it last week, it's fine.
Oh no, we did it.
Look,
there was an episode. Look, see.
We did it.
Nope.
Yeah.
It's there.
Committed. Absolute committed to the cause.
With a capital C. Yes.
Capital K. I thank you everyone for listening to us ramble on for over an hour. Hopefully edited down to a bit less. Don't forget that we are on all major platforms and you can watch us live on YouTube, Backmarkers, with Kate and Han on all major podcasts and YouTube. We'll be back giving more Formula One and motorsport average, slow-paced content.
Just the way you like it.
Slower than
we always
hats.
deliver, eventually.
That's what she said.